Like anything, you could say this is complicated. Before this, I'd never been able to afford to pay for a job. To pay for a job in the arts, because I can't work for free. But there I was, all of a sudden you've got over £1,000 in your account and you're like, oh my god, I'm rich. But the next day, I had to pay to post things overseas and that cost me 150 quid. Money I didn't have, but I couldn't say no because it was someone really important in the company asking me to do it. That's my bills, how I feed myself, keep a roof over my head. That's my house. In the good moments, there was someone there to support me. In the bad moments, I was isolated and alone. I was never told the building passcodes and I didn't understand how to ask, so I was just sneaking in every time I saw someone had opened the door, getting on with things silently, perpetually made to feel like I had to be grateful that they'd given me this role, because I don't have a degree. An assumption after assumption phrased my lived experience as a skill deficit, which, whatever, maybe I can brush up on Excel. I want to learn things I don't know, but I can't brush up my background, because culture can be rehearsed, but even inside an iron suit and tie and tailored trousers, this body is common. And I don't want to temper that. I'm common. Just not that common in the arts. During my induction, some people I met spoke with a slight note of disappointment. You don't sound very working class. That tidy box created by middle class culture for people from other backgrounds, they wanted someone who fit their image. But I don't have the capacity to hold the voice of every working class and marginalised person in my mouth. There's a balance to strike between hearing the opinions of the people you're trying to bring in and putting the onus on them to change the entire organisation. This body is not the infrastructure of inclusion, diversity and access. I know when I'm a tick box exercise and when I'm not. Would you want to feel like you're a token? See, it's not enough to say we're inclusive, because an individual word is not policy, and policy is the bare minimum, and that bare minimum is meaningless without people, because it's practice that makes progress. And we can't move into our future until institutions start to honour that. It's the people at the bottom of the pile. It's always the same people at the bottom of the pile that feel it when an organisation is a machine constantly working, never reflecting, when the response to asking for change is, we'll get around to it. But those of us that need progress knows how long it takes, that this can only be done in a hands-on way. Working in a company that does not know access is not working in a building without a door. It's a building without foundations. And we have so many buildings that need foundations to be laid that we'll get nowhere caring only about the position of our own stages. So it's time to get invested in our sector as a whole. Progress is listening, and from listening comes dialogue and conversation, the sharing of knowledge and learning. It's time to find your role, because this common body is not the infrastructure of inclusion, diversity and access. The practice of persistent change requires funds and time and space. Committed investment to change it exists in every decision, in every person, in every day, including those who aren't here right now. Being inclusive as a workplace means bringing your community into what you're creating. Knowing your community leaders and members and local activists. You need to question who you're working for. You need to question who you're making work for. Speak to us. Listen to them. But not in an outreach way. Just gonna say it explicitly. Thinking as an outsider. I don't identify as outreach. There are so many creatives working in the front of house and bars who are never considered for any of the artistic opportunities, which seems like a really strange thing to do when inclusivity is not a side project. This is not an extra, an add-on, or an afterthought. A production is not done if access has not been considered. Because there will always be culture. Culture will always exist. But the longer institutions put off meaningful committed work on diversity, the more the arts sector becomes meaningless. Without this work, there is a day in the future where this industry is no longer relevant at all. The most condescending thing is to assume that working class communities will be grateful to be a tick box exercise in another person's project. Our role has always been to survive, to keep going, to keep existing. A working class body, this body, has to be inherently creative, and if institutions don't want communities, communities will make their own culture. Maybe that's why I do what I do. I don't know. But I do know that I love what I do. I love my work it makes existing makes sense. It makes me happy. There's not that many jobs out there that people love, where they're passionate about their role and they care about doing a good job. If you're in a creative industry, you go into it because you want it inside, because it's your passion. See, there's so much energy, which, yes, we all know and need to acknowledge is too often taken by entitled managers and institutions as an okay to overwork, underpay and exploit people's boundaries. The same problems speak again. But there is so much energy, so much committed energy in this industry. We're all here because we want to be. And that passion is why I can only approach this with hope. Because some of us are doing it. Some of you are doing it. And for me, hope isn't something you feel, but something you do, something you get on with. And when we get on with it, we aren't always going to get it right. Initially, we definitely won't. But like anything, what's important is that we learn from those mistakes and that we hold each other to account. Because this isn't work that we do individually. It's too hard to do on your own if you're isolated, so hard to see where to start when you're so inside of it, where to start and where to go. It's only when we pull the weight equally that the load, the strain gets easier. It's so obvious, but together we're stronger than alone. When I started, I said that this is complicated, which in many ways it is. But there's also many ways in which it's so simple. This is about care, but not in a seminar way or a reimbursing staff mental health support way. This is the context of care that we embed in the structure, the body of our sector. If all employees are struggling, they don't need mindfulness or a mental health seminar. That organisation needs more staff. Proactive inclusion, a meaningful commitment to accessibility, is community healthcare, and I'm not sure what's more important. Because if we don't look after each other, there won't be any work made. If we don't look after each other, there will be no one here to make it. So come in, as you are, and shout about what's possible, because we're recruiting for a future where the stages are for all, the buildings have foundations, everyone has the printer codes, and the doors aren't closed. Thank you.